Hello there, everyone. What you see behind me is what happens when you let these kind of atrocities happen. This is what happens when you let indie games run free. My name is Ayumu, and I want to talk to you guys about a weird-ish subject. Are indie games killing the gaming market? Short answer, no. No, absolutely not. But I wanted to go into this about indie games and some of the effects that they've had with people. And coming from my growing up, I basically grew up with there being literally no indie games to free online indie games for things like Armor Games and other websites. But there weren't just indie games like aplenty. That has been a 2008 to like 12 is when indie games started to make their rise and become much more prevalent. And we'll add in a small bonus at the end of this. So, how are indie games affecting it? Well, coming from my background, I played a lot of the free games. Like, we had the tank game, and it was awesome. I think it was just called Tanks. So you have the tanks that are shooting at each other, and then you have games like Shell Shock Live, which just is tanks, and there are a couple other ones. So there were free games that were being produced. There were other ones. Not a lot of them stand out because a lot of them were awful. But there are free indie games. And, or whatever you want to call them, flash games or whatever. And I have had many discussions with one of my friends about this topic specifically, trying to figure out why he hates indie games. For a lot of it, partially the reason why I wanted to say that it's destroying part of the gaming market is indie games are by independent developers. Whoa. So they're not anymore, because they go through like their own publisher. Different story. They're considered indie games because they're lower budget games. They're not AAA games or AA games, if that's even a term, or B games, which is like, hey, we don't want to make a AAA game, but we're going to release it on the Vita or the 3DS or something like that. Or on the Game Boy, going back to my time. Games haven't really... The fact that you have to pay for a game is the number one problem with my friend. Because he does not like that he has to pay for games like Tanks. Or something like The Binding of Isaac, where it was made in Flash. It was made in Flash. So, well, it's just a Flash game. It shouldn't cost any money. Why should I have to pay for it? Why should you get to play it at all? It's like, now, if, like, Shell Shock Live, which I believe is like 10 USD, maybe a little lower. I think I got it for $7, maybe $8. Binding of Isaac I got for $5. So it's $5. If it was $60, that is too much money to ask for it. There are certain indie games that come out which I feel are too costly. And it's hard to say, like, how much a game should be valued at. That might be a topic for in the future. But with it, indie games help bring new ideas into the mix. Because they don't pay 1,000 employees to, let's try a new idea. Our entire company will go bankrupt because we just paid, 1,000 employees versus 5 to 10 employees who are passionate about it and want to work on it, or something like that. Like Undertale, I think, was a very, very small team. Five Nights at Freddy's was one person, I think it was just Scott Cawthorn, maybe like one other person to help him. It was not a big team. So those helped very much. They gained a lot of popularity. And if you just wanted a small title, they're like $10. Undertale might be 15 USD, but it's not that expensive. And it offers its gameplay and its take on what it wants to offer. So they all have their own benefits. And there's so much that can be done within that. Because it's newer, it's different. West of Loathing is a very heavy text-based game, and it's some of the dumbest and smartest writing I've ever read in a game in a long time without it being a very serious topic. And that's awesome. I love it. It's so stupid. You dip your hand in a spittoon and the game's like, what? No, don't do that. And you're like, do it. I'm gonna do it anyway. And the game's like, no, please don't. Please stop. And you're like, no, I'm gonna do it. And then it goes into this huge line of text. It's awesome. And it looks, looking at it, if I hadn't seen something about the game initially or known a little bit about it, it looks awful. It looks like it's money grubbing because it's all stick figures, but it fits it perfectly. So if you refuse to look at something further, is it your fault or is it the game's fault? Honestly, it's a little kind of both. Mostly it's your fault. Because you aren't being an educated consumer. New things come out all the time. Like, it's awesome that there's so many different things coming out. Because new ideas, new concepts, games like The Binding of Isaac just skyrocketed the roguelite genre up, and we got awesome games like Enter the Gungeon and Nuclear Throne, and we got some not so good games like A Wizard's Lizard. It wasn't bad, but couldn't keep up. And then there's games like Spelunky, which kind of take the platforming, but it's all randomized. It's awesome. And I'm going to say awesome a lot, because it's awesome. So there's a lot of good being done with indie games. Or they have like the free RPG horror maker games, RPG maker games that are horror, like Miseo, Ib. There are a lot of them. I can't think of them off the top of my head now, so whoops. But there are a lot of them, and those are free, and it's a way for people to tell their story. Now, if it costs money, I know it's a weird topic, because what is your money worth to you? If you had $1 million, you could just buy anything. It wouldn't matter. But when you don't have, like, you have very, very little. Like, I have $60 every 5 months, let's just say. So you can buy a big AAA like Call of Duty or Battlefield or Battlefront, or something that you can get a lot of time out, or Overwatch, multiplayer game that you can get your time's worth out of it, which is what it's good. That's awesome. Those games need to be around, but it doesn't mean that just because you don't have money or you don't want to buy those kind of games that they're bad. Now I'm going to take the opposite stance. Indie games are awful. If you look at a lot of indie games, they're awful. I'm going to this is going to be a weird thing to do, because I didn't plan this at all. I'm going to just take a direct, I'm going to look at Steam while I'm talking about this, to kind of talk about some of the games that have come out as of late being indie titles. Steam has almost exclusively indie titles, which is cool, because it can showcase so much more. But that's not always a good thing. there are a lot of games in certain genres where they're done to death. An example is just the jumping on the coattail. I'm actually not going to look super hard at Steam right now, because I just saw my example. PlayerUnknown. I really like that game. I have like 100 hours in the game. It's a lot of fun if that's what you like. It's a battle royale game. Got videos on YouTube if you want to check them out. Boom, self-promoted. But there are now even more games like just jumping, because that is wildly popular now. I will admit these could have been in development already, but Overwatch jumped on it. Not Overwatch, sorry, that's a different topic. Fortnite! Fortnite jumped on it. H1Z1, I believe, jumped on it. Like, they had, like, the same concept and then, like, immediately split. But now it's, like, trying to get back some of the popularity, I believe. And I know it was around, like, a little bit before, but there are a lot of games that have now just, like, jumped on it. There are games, like, coming out that are like, hey, we're a battle royale game. Or, with Overwatch, at the point we're talking about this, being hero shooters. Some of them, like Battleborn, were, like, in the works for a while. Overwatch is not the definitive, or was not, like, the ultimate creation of, like, everyone is copying. Because other games can exist of the same genre. Just because you did it first does not mean you did it best. I can't think of any examples right now, but it's true. Because if Overwatch came out real crappy, it was still crappy. Battleborn came out, Paladins came out. There were games before Overwatch which were hero shooters. I can't remember them. They just had, like, strictly military, and you go through it. As a, like, weird thing, Rainbow Six Siege is kind of a hero shooter because you pick a character and they have specific abilities. Not to the degree of Overwatch, but they have, like, specific equipment that they have available, like a shotgun or a shield, like a riot shield or something like that. So it does have some of those elements in it. And that... sometimes we just get flooded with crap. There is a lot of crap. I don't actually want to point out too many specific examples, but I will say early access is the biggest thing affecting indie games, and, like, why they're losing credibility. Stop releasing early access games that are garbage. And, well, Steam does fully notify you, whether you care or not to read it. Steam notifies you about early access. And early access indie games can fall away very quickly, because a lot of the time when something goes into early access, it demands a lot out of you. Things like, PlayerUnknown, $30. That's a lot of money for a game that's not finished. There's no estimated time on it being finished. They kind of tossed out a schedule for updates so they can make them better, you know, a proper update instead of, hey, let's just release an update because it's an update, which I appreciate. You know, give me what I want, or give me something right rather than on time, necessarily. Like if a game gets pushed back, who cares, so long as it's done well. I don't mind waiting. Don't release crap and have me wait. So, with the early access, there are a lot of games which have come into early access for... And they've done nothing. There's nothing about them that's worth anything. And that's awful. So, that's where it, like, starts to kind of kill it. And it also kills it in a very weird mental fashion. If you look at Steam, 30,000 games on it, maybe? I'm sure there's, like, an actual number, but there's a megaton of games on it. you can't play them all. It's like impossible. And there's so much to it. There are so many different options. You've got RPGs, you've got strategy games, you've got unique niche indie games. And a lot of the times when you have too many options, you default to picking nothing. While if you look at AAA titles, there's not that many coming out at a time. Depending on genre, like there can be some. But if you look at big AAA title first-person shooters, what do you have coming out? You have, or for 2017, like Christmassy season, you have Battlefront 2, Call of Duty. I don't believe it's Battlefield 1 DLC, I believe. Maybe 3? That's 3 options. But if you look at, like, what's coming out tomorrow on Steam, it could be like 5, 10, 15 games. So in a month, it can be overwhelming with games, dude, for choices. So you don't know where to go. And crap can bury awesome games. Things like... a lot of these get risen up because people find them and talk about them because they're good. But West of Loathing, it doesn't look like anything it is good about it. I don't care. It's stick figures. Who cares? You know, West of Loathing, gone. Rocket League, that's a dumb concept. It's cars playing soccer. That's stupid. That game is so much fun. It's awesome. Factorio. What the hell is a Factorio? It's friggin' amazing. Duck Game. Is like a... It's an arena 2D shooter. But it's a platform game where you go against your friends. It's awesome. There's so much to those games. But they could be buried by crap. Because they can't get out like as much press as AAA titles can. So, and also we start to get down about what games to pick or what games to use or play because there's just so much crap. So we default to like classics. We just play that shooter we've been playing for a while. We don't experiment. We don't try new things. We just keep telling ourselves Skyrim is the best. It doesn't get better than Skyrim. Because we don't want anything to be better. No. So that is how video games are killing the game industry. Because there's a lot of crap out there. There are a lot of good games out there. Sadly, there's always more crap. With bigger titles, and that's the only argument I can make to saying where AAA is better is they are supposed to have more effort put into them because they have more resources put into them. Maybe resources is better than effort because sometimes they're abused like Evolve is and stuff like that. So that they pretend like they got this false hype around them that this is a AAA title, this is something you have to buy, you need to buy, versus something like West of Loathing where it would immediately like just go under the radar. The Binding of Isaac. If you look at like what The Binding of Isaac is, it's like, why would I want a Zelda-like game that's a roguelite? What is that, like someone who's sneaky and stabs up on people, but he doesn't really kill people because it's casual? He's light, he doesn't really kill people, it's fun for the family, he just kidnaps people and brings them somewhere else. That's what roguelite is. Ooh yeah. So, those are my thoughts on it. Give me your thoughts on indie games. Good, bad, indifferent, or the fourth option, profit. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching. I do appreciate it. As always, hit that like button if you enjoyed this video. Share it around, get other people's opinions on it, and then hit that subscribe button if you haven't. And then let me know what other topics you guys want to hear me talking about. Whether it be something from a review of a game or a movie or a TV show to a topic like what's better, Alolan Ninetales or regular Ninetales? Well, hold on a moment. I can't put the image in, so I won't. I'm just gonna put an image in. Have a good one.